along the way, there were times when it was exciting for you. There were times when it was daunting, where it was exhausting, all of that. But for all of us that know that there's a piece of our life that is part of our destiny, that creates our purpose and lets how we do life and help others work better.
Welcome to the Moxie podcast. We are in a new month and I am really excited. Last month, we were talking about entrepreneurship, and a lot of those themes in entrepreneurship, especially bootstrap to scale, was talking about this idea of, we talked about burnout. We talked about all these things that we go through. And at the end of the day, talked about what grounds us. Also, in the beginning of this year, we talked about rhythms as leaders and what that means to have rhythms in our life. And so I am really, really excited for July because of course we record all these earlier. So I'm already like excited for you guys to hear these episodes because we're in the middle of the year, and sometimes the middle of the year is really stressful. We're looking back and we're also know what we want to accomplish, and sometimes that can be overwhelming. But as we've had all these themes throughout the year, um these tools that we're going to talk about and the people that are on the podcast this month all are a part of Get Clarity International. And today I have Cathy, who's the founder of Get Clarity and is so much a part of my life and my story as an entrepreneur. When we were introduced in 2018, and I started this journey together. So welcome to the Moxie podcast.
Good to be here, Jenny. Hi, everybody.
It's such it's kind of a divine moment because I feel like, I have taught shift and the shift method, and I've been utilizing these tools in my life, and really just creating a new self-awareness and understanding my own energy and what that brings into the space for a good 6 years or so. And it's been really fun to do it with you and be able to walk with you. I was thinking the other day, because we're going to get through all this and I want people to know your origin story, but I was thinking the other day when we first met, we created a bridge plan and kind of created this path. And you mentioned this before when we were off the mic, but that back then was when the podcast was really part of my bridge plan. It was like, I think I want to use my voice a little bit more. I think I want to start this podcast thing, and I want it to use it. I want to start it because I want to use it as a source of connection, because it did start for local connection first in Mombasa and then became into a global podcast. But now I've been doing it for 5 years, which is kind of mind blowing to me. And it's been so fun because when I laminated that first bridge plan, and it's just like this idea that's there. And now it's been such a big part of my life. And now you're on it. It's like a full circle moment.
It is, but it is divine, of course. It's divinely inspired, divinely supported, divinely assisted. I mean, we are in it with the best support we ever could imagine.
Yeah, so true. And so before we get into talking about this whole month, to set this up for you guys who are listening, this whole month, we're going to be talking about this idea of the mid-year. I'm calling it the mid-year crisis and I'm kind of basing it off of midlife crisis and these themes, but we're going to talk about how we don't get stuck in those, how we can move past those, and what are some tools, practical steps to do that. But before we even get to that and kind of the first set of those themes that we're talking through, I would love for people to get to know who you are a bit. And so the big broad question that I ask people on the podcast is, who are you and what you're best known for? So however way you want to answer that, I'm going to let you take it away.
Well, who am I? Well, my name is Cathy Hawk, but that's just a little bit of who I am. Uh, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a teacher, I'm a tool maker, and I am a total optimist. I don't even know how to describe my total faith in the world that we're in, and our callings and our purpose. So I'm also on purpose. I'm purposeful. Yeah.
That's good. That's like a perfect answer. That's all of you. How about, so obviously when I teach students and they're in the classroom and I'm like, okay, this is where everything got created because you said you are a tool maker. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about Get Clarity and kind of where it came about and a little bit of your journey of that experience, where now you've been able to like allow others. I mean, this is what, 30 plus years of teaching and getting this in people's hands.
It's as always, synchronicity is at play. And your subject about the midlife crisis is so interesting because clarity started in the middle of my, uh, I don't know if I'd call it a crisis, but what I realized was that I had this deep-seated feeling that I had a calling that hadn't been fully realized. And so, on our phones, when you push call waiting, it kind of felt that way to me. I was not in a bad place at all. And
Yeah.
actually, I was in a really good place. I was financially secure, well educated, had my son, who I consider one of my blessings because I did a lot of infertility work to get him here, and and so I was at a good place in my life. And it wasn't even, Jenny, it wasn't even an empty feeling. It was like here I was in 40, 45, and I was like, you know what? I've got a lot of life left. So I'm going to really take a look at what my next steps are. And during that period of time, I took a sabbatical and I studied a lot of the energetic things that I was interested in. That's the message. When I would
Mhm.
meditate and pray, it would come to me that, there you really know human energy. So I did at the time. I took a break. And I would say that for anybody listening, when you're in the middle of not where we call it the gray area, but gray line, but where you don't know where you're going, I think the best thing to do is to sit yourself down and get some quiet time and just listen to the words that come to you, and use them as your guidance. Because the old saying, from God's lips to your ears, that's how I always think of it. We're getting those divine messages.
Yeah, I share this story often of when I first met you because I was in the middle of a road trip, which we're about to do as we're recording, we're about to do this. But in the middle of a road trip, had a one, no, this was earlier. I've done many road trips, Cathy. In the middle of a road trip, and I had a 2-year-old and a 4-month-old. I think Sophie was 4 months. And I was speaking at an event that you were at, and which I felt so like not qualified to speak at this event. That's like where I was in life. I was like, why am I speaking at this event? And what is this? And why did they ask me? But I felt honored to be there. And I remember seeing you, it was like we were at kind of a campsite, as you know, and it was like we were in it was kind of like a cafeteria, and seeing you across the cafeteria, and you just, again, as I know the language to put around it, like just had such a strong energy. You held your personal field so well. And I was like, I have to know who that is. I have to know who she is. And I just remember us having that conversation. And I think a week later or 2 weeks later, I was in your office and like, help me. What's next? That's where I feel like the our start of our story together began.
Yes, and what you were saying about you were attracted to me, and
Mhm.
I remember holding Sophie because we were going to
Yeah.
have a grandchild, and I was like, oh my God, I'm getting practice. This is wonderful. Um, but that is how, by what you said, me holding steady, and the is how it is with how we attract the things to us that are our next steps. And and that's so important to understand. So my curiosity in life, and part of my purpose, I've always been curious about human energy because I would see people, and I'm really good observer, And I would see people light up over things. And when I started coaching, I noticed a change in their physiology. Now, everybody listening knows this. So you don't, it's just, I'm calling it to your awareness, like you called it to our awareness about how you stepped over to me and said, I'm ready for some coaching and some next steps. So that radiance is noticeable, and so I just happened to be the one that said lights on and got it on an NPR broadcast that went all over the world. And I got, oh my goodness, thousands of phone calls. It blew our, at that time, answering machine out totally. And people said that, they said, oh, I finally have a language for what it is when I feel in my body that something is really right. And so I ended up calling that your inner GPS, like the one on your phones that guide you, that says no right, wrong, no judgment, those guidance systems that say, here's where you are now. You want to go somewhere. And my job is to help everybody figure out where that is, what it is that lights them up, and then what are the action steps to get there. And that's exactly the process. You met me at my Clarity Center in Denver, and we filmed you and got a good baseline of where your light shows itself in your system, because everybody's different. And then we did that wonderful clarity interview of exploring the options that were unique to you. And for every point of light, then I was able to record that. Then you and I put all those points of light together like a big puzzle where you just weren't sure what the pieces are. And I think that's the best way to learn for all of us to understand how our body gives us signals, and
Mhm.
then we have to piece them together.
Mhm, mhm. I wanna mention this because I found it really interesting. First of all, I didn't effectively use the tools till probably, like, 2020 when I was like, "Oh my gosh, I had these tools that I should be using." I was in another, like, kind of it was postpartum, 3rd child, kind of darker space, and also the pandemic, I think, hit us obviously all in a really hard space. And once I started it effectively using them on a daily basis and creating new patterns, that's when I, like, really was like, "Oh, wow, this is something big." Now, granted, like what we created in 2018 still leveraged so much forward in those 2 years, but it's like I was able to use the, daily check-in with myself and be aware and all of that. But I remember so vividly. So I would love actually you to talk towards this because I found it really interesting because when I a lot of too what I talk about is like, okay, when we to pay attention to our body too, right? And when there's like it feels like a lot of effort, like why is it feeling like that, right? The energy there, and then versus things that are at ease. And when I was talking to a friend the other day, I was like, you know what? Like everything, and you'll know this because you've been walking with me for so long. I was like, everything used to feel so disjointed. And I was like, I'm literally doing the same things, but they all feel in so much alignment. I'm like, it's just I'm getting to do all the things that I love. But it all comes together so cohesively and in flow. And it doesn't, to me, people always are like, you do a lot. And I'm like, no, I just do things that I love and I'm lights on. And to me, it doesn't, it doesn't feel like a lot. It feels so in flow and so good. But I remember, so I was sitting with you in 2018, obviously had my second child still at a young age. And I just started my doctorate program. I just remember after you'd asked me all of these questions, and every year, I feel like every couple months you asked me the same question. But it was like anytime we would talk about this program, I would just be like I just so exasperated and so lights off. And I just remember you asking me, you're like, you have to do the program. And I was like, I am doing the program. Like I was so adamant about doing the program. And it was the hardest years of my life so far. That sounds very dramatic, but it was so hard. You saw me walk through that. And it was like, as soon as I graduated, as soon as it was like done, it was like this such a breath of fresh air. And I wouldn't have it any other way because it brought open, it opened so many other doors and opportunities that I had to vision and see towards. But I would be curious of like your advice or themes you've seen in other people you've worked with where it's like that, where there are there are some points where we do have a lot of effort, or there are things that potentially don't really put our lights on all the time, but we still need to press forward. Because I know that that was my decision to do that and whatnot. But I like to, I try to capture that, because not everything is so easeful. And there are things, obviously, it's not just like an easy fix when we're saying, oh, like be lights on. No, it's a lot of work and how we're, figuring out what we're moving towards with clarity. So yeah, I would love to hear kind of your opinion on that when you're like talking to me or other, clients you worked with when they're in that similar situation.
Well, it's so human to be in that.
Yeah.
Let me put it that way. So every one of my clients, when I think of all the people over the years, the so that everybody listening can get a better context for it, you're wanting to get your doctorate lit you up. And
Hmm.
so it wasn't just like, I think I'm going to get a doctorate, it's a good idea, it in the lights on of it, let that puzzle piece if it be part of your destiny. So I was able to recognize that, and it was important. So for you to get along your soul's journey this lifetime, that was important. Now, along the way, there were times when it was exciting for you. There were times when it was daunting, where it was exhausting, all of that. But for all of us that know that there's a piece of our life that is part of our destiny, that it creates our purpose and lets how we do life and help others work better, then we go about those tasks even though we're tired. And my coaching to everybody is try to rest yourself, try to delegate the things away from you that are, I'm going to say, distracting you from your purpose. And let's be honest, we're women, and our kids distract us all the time, and we don't delegate them away. They're with us, they're part of the journey. So you have to go back to, how can I do this? In your case, the doctorate. How can I find parts of it that are exciting and lights on for me, so that at least along the way, you're re-energizing yourself? And sometimes the only way to do it is to remember the light at the end of that tunnel, and just
Mm.
remember that you're on the way, you're on the path. And and the key thing is that we take care of ourselves. As women, we do a lot, and we have to know how to, we have to stop and take care of ourselves. Because in our, the family structure and all those things, if we go down, everybody goes down.
Mhm.
So that,
Mhm.
so you want to move away from martyrdom, like I will die for my cause, which is ridiculous, to the absolute, I will figure out a way to have some energy on this path till I get there. And that's what you did. That's what
Mhm.
I did. Same way. I ended up with a parathyroid tumor in the middle of my journey. And it lost a lot of my bone structure and didn't feel good. And I'm back. So yeah.
Yeah. No, that's so good. I think well, I love that you mentioned just women in general. I mean, that's like my life's work, I feel like, is like, how do we raise self-efficacy levels and confidence in women and give them consistency so that they can create so much change in their community? So, um, love that. I want to not pivot, just naturally move into talking about the clarity choice point guide, because I think as we are talking about this topic in this year, we have a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of leaders, a lot of executive directors, a lot of mothers that listen to this podcast. And whether you're listening to it right now at a space of kind of desperation or exhaustion, or whether you're in a really great space, I think it's just awesome to understand how we do have the tools right inside of us to shift our mind and to shift what's kind of in front of us. And so today I wanted to focus on this withdrawn and hopelessness themes, and we'll shift into better language. But I feel this kind of is near and dear to my heart, this specific theme, because my common default is to stagnate and to step away from people and to stop communicating, and it is hopelessness when I'm in it and I'm not fully aware or in control of what's happening. Like that will be my default, because as you know, I'm very optimistic, have a large faith, take big faith steps and take big risk. And I think that's where I can fall to. But I would love to talk through if someone is in that space, if they're looking at this year and they're just completely overwhelmed and then withdrawing and feel hopeless for what is next. I mean, with obviously the choice point guide, and we'll kind of show you guys in the little screen here. Um, what would be some first steps? Like people who obviously haven't been through shift or talked to us, or been coached by us or anything, but what would you just some first practical steps for people to really start to like get out of that space? Because when we're in that space, we can feel really stuck and in that eddy of a river, as you say. So what would be that kind of first step to trying to make a different change?
So first of all is recognizing that you're there and that you're stuck. And the important part of that is that women are physiologically built to go past pain and upset. And why is that? Because there wouldn't be a baby on the planet if we gave up when times were tough. So
Mhm.
how do you take that natural um, exhaustion or upset, and then the step one is first you recognize it. Step two, you have to say to yourself, what would I rather have? What else would I rather have? So you head towards something else that you want. And on the guide, and so people don't have it. So just know there is a guide out there with word choices. But without that, you have to think of one thought. All you need to switch the energy in your body and in your brain is one positive word. I call it a 911. And mine is I choose peace. Now, so one is I choose, so I'm not a victim, it's up to me. And then my favorite thing is peace. And then I usually say, and love. So I know that if I do that physiologically in 17 seconds or less, my body will change the neurochemicals it's getting from adrenaline, which is that fear, and cortisol and all the negative, and it will in 17 seconds or less give me some endorphins. Then I get so I get up a little and lightened up a little, and then I can expand from that. And so the 17 seconds will get you kind of out of the quicksand with it, but you go past that. So once you're out, keep going. And in the middle, one of my friends, this was a favorite one of mine. One of my friends, when I was in a very dark spot, um, gave me a refrigerator magnet that to this day I still have. And it says, when you're going through hell, keep going. And that's served me well. So,
Yeah, I like that. Words are so powerful, and words of affirmation is my love language. So I love the words. It also can be really defeating if I'm feeding myself the wrong words. So I think something I learned so much from you is like setting that intention statement. I was telling someone the other day too, like as an entrepreneur and anyone in the virtual space, like we go from back to back to back to meetings. Like even today, I was like, Cathy, we need to push it back a little. Like just that's just the nature of being online now, and the capabilities that we have. But we can go from one meeting, I can go from one meeting that's like super intense and about a strategy to a next that should be light and, just very like heart, just a light conversation. And so something that I've put into practice since working with you is like setting that like quick intention of like, okay, I got 2 minutes to stand up real quick and breathe and be like, I'm choosing to be present and kind and here and courageous, whatever that might be, and changing that and resetting. Because in the past, I would see, I mean, as leaders, we control the space and we control our culture. And I can look back at our journey of times where I was so anxious and so overwhelmed. And that's how my whole organization operated, was in just this like overwhelm and distrust because they just didn't know what I was going to throw their way. And that's also another thing that I love about this guide, which, by the way, we will have a link where you guys can, we'll figure that out. That will be in the show notes. We'll figure out a link where you can get the resources for this. But that's why I love this guide, because the way that it goes starts from the leader and goes across to the organization kind of behaviors. And I don't know if you want to explain that for people who are listening, audio, like how it works across, because I think when you taught me that, that was the most powerful for me. And when I taught my team in Kenya, which this is so cool because I have 22 leaders in Kenya who run an amazing ship there. Not literally a ship, but an amazing operations, productions, logistics, everything. You remember when I was like in the weeds of everything, and that's not my place anymore. And so it's so great to be able to use that same language and to teach them that, and for them to understand how they influence our artisans and our suppliers and all of that in their communication. So it's been really cool to see that. Yeah, just be adopted there as well. But would love for you to kind of talk through that, because I knew, my last thing I would say is I knew as a leader the amount of change you can have as a ripple effect. That's literally my doctorate's in leadership education. So I'm a, geek on leadership. But I think to understand theories like leadership theories and followership and Maslow's and all these different things, and then to couple it with understanding myself and the energy that I hold, was really powerful, because it was like I have the academic side. I know this works as a leader and we shape the culture, but then to actually know the tools of how I shape the culture and know myself was really a game changer for me. So, yeah.
Well, that's how the guide came to be. Was again, as I said, I was a tool maker, and that's a gift that I have, is an ability to create systems that are really effective. And that came, by the way, from being a gardener, so that all the plants stayed alive, just like all the
I'm proud of you. I'm not a green thumb. I have fake plants. Fake plants work for me.
so it used to be one right plant, wrong place. And so if the right plant can get themselves into, and the right person can get themselves into a situation where they can't thrive. And in recognizing that and watching what happens when people get themselves stuck in a place where they're not thriving. And what actually happens is they lose, it's called executive function, but high level thinking. And they couldn't get out. And no matter how smart they were, they couldn't see what the next step was. So I was like, okay, we need a tool for this. So there they are, they're stuck. They need a switch tool. We call it shift, a switch tool, and where they can choose another thought, knowing then that in 17 seconds their body will start to give them some endorphins and things will start to change. And so that's how I developed the what you were holding up, which we call the attention guide, because it is a matter of where we put our attention. We either put it on being stuck and what's not working, or we put it on a new thought and what could work better, and then watch that in our body. So the key, that's how it came about, was making pairs of thoughts that made sense together. And obviously there are thousands of negative and positive words, of course. But over the years, what I picked on this guide were the 56 most often heard. So I would hear clients say, oh, I'm in anxiety, I'm having a panic attack. Okay, that if they keep focusing that way, they'll get more of that. So I was like, well, what could they shift their thought to right away that would quickly stop that and then move them forward? So I made an opposite word, and in against anxiety, it happens to be enthusiasm, because that they're embodied words, and the adrenals function that way better when they're in enthusiasm versus anxiety. Another one, famous, I think favorite, that I've used over the years is the difference in coaching and telling. And so
Mm.
the as moms, as leaders, there is a very ineffective tendency to just tell everybody how to do things, and even to get kind of fierce about it, like move now or get out of my way, and that's not
Yeah.
very effective. It's exhausting because then you end up doing everything. So coaching is the opposite of that. So when I notice people get stuck in trying to tell everybody how to do everything and not delegating and what have you, the opposite of that is coaching, which is stopping, listening, and asking people the right next question. And so those are how those opposites work, and they work all the way through the 56 words that are there. Um, what's a favorite for you on here? You were saying withdrawal was something. Well, withdrawal's opposite is willingness. So
Mhm.
switch from that, getting back, shrinking, getting smaller. If you can say, what am I willing to do? Switch it to
Mm.
willingness. And that's a much more empowering word. I don't know, they're all my favorite.
Yeah, they're all really good. I like that you mentioned withdrawal though, because that is a theme of today. And I think that's one of the first things we do, right? Is sometimes withdrawal. So the willingness, I like that of understanding it's yeah, just willing to take that first step again and to have that, that hope there. One thing that I on this guide, I mean, I think I say this every episode when I talk to people is like, oh, I could talk to you for hours because I just love what the Moxie community has created in the conversations. But to kind of end our time together, I do want to talk about the gray line, the transformation
Mhm.
line, right? Right? Transformation line.
Yes, choice.
This, I feel like people automatically, some of these words, they see them and literally was in conversation last week with someone I'm coaching and they see it as like negative. Like, so some of these words, I'll name them, are discomfort, confusion, anger, frustration, shift, transformation, challenge, paradox. But specifically in this like anger and frustration, I think sometimes people can see that as a negative or below the line, as we say, like kind of emotion. But really that's, what you've taught me so well is it's like, no, that's like that transition line where you can decide uh where to go next. And I think it has allowed me to encompass these emotions differently. To be like, okay, I am frustrated. Now it's my choice, right? If I want to self-sabotage, if I want to go into this other side, dictate, or if I actually want to be of service, if I actually want to be confident and move into these different spaces. And so I'm curious, when you were also developing this guide, that line, um, like where, there's a lot of words to work with, but what were some like, what made you choose these? That's kind of a broad question, but because I think they're so good because again, discomfort, not everyone wants to sit in discomfort, but we got to be there to be able to make that decision for ourselves, right? And choose for ourselves. So,
Well, so everything in the gray line, those words that you read out are all very just part of big change. And as leaders, and moms are leaders for sure, and parents and everything. And whenever we go through a change, these are normal feelings that we have. So is it normal to be confused? How did I ever get trademarked the name of Claire? Because people would call and they go, I am so confused. I am so frustrated. And I'm thinking, let's remember those words. And,
right.
and I need to shift. And I don't know how to meet this challenge. And they were just talking all the words that are part of that experience when we are not where we used to be and we're not where we're headed. And that's
Mhm.
that in between. And that's all normal. And when people, now you don't want to live there. So, the point is for you to it's okay. I'm all right. It's okay to be frustrated. This is a clue. The clue is that I'm ready to move to the next step. And so as long as there's no judgment about it, like, well, or let's take anger. Anger is
Mhm.
because we all girls were taught that it's not nice to be angry. Well, anger is a catalytic force that will allow
Mm.
people to say, I am so upset about this. I am so angry about the state of fill in the blank that I am willing to go into action. And that's where anger is useful. And we explain, of course, you don't want to get anger all over other people. That's not the point here. The point is that it spurs you into above the line action. And the rebels of this world, of which I count myself and welcome it, are the people who are the change makers. They will rebel correctly above the line with systems that don't work anymore and will go in and take what's necessary to make the change. So embracing that anger can move you to right action, and love being a rebel with a cause. Rebels without a cause are a little bit different. But, a rebel with a cause. We are the ancient, we are thought leaders, we are the change makers. And it takes that kind of fierce internal energy to get fired up enough to go do what has to happen. Um,
So
did,
good.
did that
That's so great. Yes, that's I mean, an amazing explanation of like anger, frustration. It's okay. And I like that you said again, it can be it is a catalytic force. Being a rebel with a cause. I'm a I'm a change maker, so I get that. And yeah, and then to not sit there, right? It's okay to feel those. And I think sometimes we think we kind of can get down on ourselves, but it's their normal feeling. So thank you so much for sharing that. And like I said, we will have a link of some sort to make sure that you guys can have access to these types of resources. But I want to end our time together. So first and foremost, where can people find you and get to know you a bit more? How can they, I don't know, get a hold of you?
getclarity.com. And I personally answer the emails that come to me from, I mean, they're screened, but I personally answer them because that's so important to me. I really believe that God gives us our next lights on step. And if
Mhm.
someone reaches out to me with a question or a curiosity, that it is my sacred duty to be sure that they get an answer from the heart. Um,
I
so
love it.
yeah,
I love
email
it.
Cathy Hawk getclarity.com. Very
Look
simple.
at that guy. She's giving you her email right here. Look at that. That's so awesome. You can also, if you guys have any questions, reach out to me as well. There's always those resources and lots of things. And as you guys know, I always answer DMs on Instagram, can send you over some voice notes. But Cathy has been just a beacon of light for me and has created new light in myself of just teaching me the right tools to be able to create clarity and alignment. And so as we end our time, we always end with the one last question. And that is, Cathy, what is one last thing to live by that you would like to share with our Moxie community?
Find out what lights you up and do it as if your life depends upon it. Because it
Perfect. Perfect. I just interrupted you. No, keep finishing your thought.
that was it. Because it does. Our vitality, the energy that we have to be alive and to do our purposeful service in the world, that is the message. Find out what that is and do it as if your life depends upon it, because it does.
Thank you so much for being here and spending time with our community. It's a joy to have again a pinch me full circle moment of having Moxie podcast on my bridge plan, and then 5 years later having you on the Moxie podcast, and it's been thriving. So, thank you for being here, and for all of those listening, go check out all those resources. Reach out to us. We'd love to connect. And as always, Moxie on.